Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Welcome to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me as always is Liam Billingham, and today's film is Heat.
It's Die Hard in an epic crime saga drama. Phil, I have to tell you, I feel like a radio DJ every time
We're getting closer and closer to that vibe like, with every show.
Boom. Big day here on the podcast.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
Few recently called this the greatest movie ever made, so...
I genuinely think there is a case to say that this is the greatest film ever made.
Hold it, because first we have to introduce the greatest guest to talk about
certainly
this
do.
movie. With us in the studio is Katie Walsh. Katie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This is so great.
In person.
It's amazing.
It's wild.
It's wild. We're so excited you decided to come on for this. You have a special relationship to Michael Mann. Movies and to him, because in addition to being a Los Angeles-based film critic, podcast host, and moderator, you produce Miami Nice with our friend Blake Howard.
I co-host it. But I produce it in the sense that it's just the two of us, and we just get our guests and...
Right.
You know, it's just a fun, easy vibe. Yeah.
It's great. And in addition, you also review weekly film releases for the Tribune News Service and the Los Angeles Times, and you are the vice president of the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. I just want to say right out the gate that you're one of my favorite film critics to read.
Oh, Liam.
It's so true. Nice. And it's cool to read someone who's really thoughtful, even when I'm like, I don't agree, but I love this review.
Oh, thank you.
You know, recently your Oppenheimer review was like, I love this movie, but I was so like... Just great film criticism. And I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you so much. That's
really
sweet of you to say.
Absolutely. And this is going to be great. So you've interviewed Michael Mann.
Yes, I interviewed him on, we did a Ferrari Nice. So we talked about Ferrari. And then I also just did a Q&A with him for Collateral at the Egyptian.
That's
amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say when I that's so cool.
Well, for anyone that's unclear or doesn't know, we know because we love it and we're deeply down the Michael Mann rabbit hole. But can you tell anyone that's unfamiliar about Miami Nice and what exactly the concept was? And
so the concept was, it was deep in the pandemic in 2020, and Blake and I were like, let's drink and talk about Miami Vice.
And drink mojitos specifically as well, right?
Yes. And so
you're fiends for mojitos.
We would drink mojitos, obviously. We were just bored as hell.
Right.
And I had sort of bugged him about doing a Miami Vice podcast, like kind of jokingly. And then he was like, we were in the pandemic and like Australia was crazy lockdown. And he was like, let's do it. Let's just like get on Zoom and do a silly Miami Vice podcast. And he just was like, go out, let's recreate the poster. I just like snapped a quick selfie, sent it over to Blake. We did the podcast artwork first without really knowing.
And it is cool.
It is really
cool.
You guys do look cool.
Okay, Garth Franklin from Dark Horizons photoshopped it, and we just like threw up the podcast art on Twitter, and suddenly my DMs were full of people being like, wait, I love this movie. Oh my God, I'm so excited for this. Like, so we were like, oh, this will just be like kind of a lark. And then we took like a little hiatus in the summer, and then we came back and we were doing more interviews, because I don't think we could not have sustained us just like riffing on
one
Miami.
Vice minute or something like that. Yeah.
So it's more of an interview type show, but at this point we call it like a modern man show. We because it's been 4 years and we've kind of tapped everything to say about Miami Vice. So we do a little subset called Collateral Confessions. We've done some Ferrari interviews. We've talked about Tokyo Vice. We've done at least one episode on Black Hat. Potentially going to do something on Public Enemies.
Oh, I love
We love
Public
that
Enemies.
movie.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So what is your relationship with Mann? Like, have you always been a big fan of Mann?
No, I mean, I came to him kind of late, to be honest. And Heat was like, I did not like grow up with Heat. It was like a blind spot that I had to fill.
Right.
But it's funny about filling a Heat-shaped blind spot is like, you're almost like, I think people have been underselling this movie. Like, people will be like, oh, it's a masterpiece. It's the greatest movie ever made. And then you're like, yeah, whatever. And then you're like, actually, this is better than what everyone
Totally agree. I'm literally
said.
was thinking that's the exact same thing. I'm watching this and I'm going, put this against Casablanca, put this against The Godfather, put this against, Citizen Kane. Like there's a level of perfection to this film that is unparalleled, I think, in all cinema, especially because the mechanics of it are so complex to get every single part, every single choice, every single piece of music, every single casting choice, beyond the fact that the narrative is perfect, all the aesthetic and stylistic choices are perfect and timeless. It still feels like as cool and current now as it did in 1995. So, like, completely agree.
I was rewatching it like a couple years ago, and I'm like, guys, I don't think we've talked enough about Al Pacino's performance.
Oh, my God.
And I'm saying this as, the podcast co-host of Blake Howard, who's made one Heat minute about every minute of Heat. I'm like, I still think we haven't given this performance enough.
Well, we have a whole section on that we can dive deep into.
When did you first see this, Phil?
So I saw this when it came out.
Okay,
couldn't have been more excited. And it's been an interesting. I saw it with my dad, of course, Christmas era 1995 when it came out. I knew about it from the Empire VHS trailer cassettes that would come with the magazine and stuff, and couldn't wait for this movie. But it was interesting because I was like, we thought it was great, but I was 14 years old. How could I understand marriage? How could I understand a guiding philosophy that is your navigation system through life? How could I understand a dedication to work? All of these different sort of your relationships with your partners, your romantic partners, your professional partner, all of these different things. I had zero life experience to truly understand what this film was beyond the very superficial understanding that this is like a cool, stylish film about a cop and a thief. So on that level, I was like, this movie was great, but it didn't like blow my socks off in the way it does as an adult. And so my relationship with the movie over time has been kind of amazing because it's very Tenet-esque. We won't go on a Tenet diatribe in the sense, don't worry. We're going to have, there's so much to cover. We're going to keep the Tenet stuff off the docket.
But we did just see it in 70mm.
We did just see it in 70mm, and it was amazing. It was amazing. But my point is, this is a film for me that actually improves with every viewing. And it's such a rare thing that every single, and I swear I must have seen it 70 times at this point, and that's not an exaggeration. Because I watched it so much in my teenage years and I've had it on every format that's been available from VHS onwards. But every single time I watch it, I get a deeper level of understanding or take something else away from it. And that's so rare in a movie where sometimes it's just like, I love the experience of watching this movie and going on the ride, but to actually, this film does both. It's both a visceral, thrilling, like truly exciting action thriller, but at the same time, it's so profound and deep about the human condition. That was my big takeaway on this watch, was that. I was like, I can't believe that someone as like, you think of Michael Mann, right? And you know him well. You've interviewed him.
I wouldn't say sometimes
I know him well. You guys hang out.
You know him pretty, but you know him pretty well as a.
Hey, Mike. I'm at the podcast.
You know what makes him tick as an artist to more than most, right? And often I think the thing with Mann is like there's something like his characters that's almost quite clinical in the way that he approaches things because he's so precise. But yet, he never, in this movie especially, never loses sight of the human emotion. And my big takeaway this time was like, this is the most humanistic film about people suffering and the longing and the loneliness and the drive for connection, which is so exacerbated by the LA setting because we're all so disparate here and we tend to be in our own little pods in our cars. So for me, this time, just watching it again, I was like, this is one of the most profound films about the human condition. So I'm now at that level. It's not even a cops and robbers saga now, you know?
Yeah, it's also just a slap-ass action movie.
It's that too,
incredible.
but it's so much more.
Yeah, no, totally.
What's your relationship with it?
So I don't remember this movie coming into theaters. Weirdly, a couple months later, I remember being at the video store, and my dad showed me The Godfather when I was 8 years old. He was just like, yeah, my dad ruled. He was like, you're 9 or 8, it's time. We're reading Macbeth, and we're watching Heat, or The Godfather. I was like, you got it, Dad. And I think I was the one who was like, there's a new Robert De Niro, Al Pacino movie, and I brought it home. And he was like, what? Because he didn't read. He just watched. He loved movies, but he wasn't up on them. And I brought it home, and I remember, speaking of the VHS, it was 2 tapes.
Oh, shit.
And in my mind, I was like, a 2-tape movie is a good movie. Because it was like The Godfather, it was Bridge Over the River Kwai, it was all these other things. And we watched it. Titanic. You're right, Titanic. This is a pro-Titanic pod, to be clear. Who isn't?
Cameron heads.
Die Hard on a Titanic, anyone?
Die Hard on an ocean liner.
That's actually... Never mind. Okay, so... and I then rewatched... We bought the VHS tape and I rewatched it after school. It was in the rotation with The Limey, Out of Sight. Just these mature movies that I was 15, 16 and was like, I'm going to watch these all the time. Mm-hmm. And then... I became obsessed with The Insider. That became my favorite Michael Mann movie for a long time. And then a couple of things happened. One, our mutual friend, Bilga Beery, hosted a talk with Michael Mann in 2015 at BAM in Brooklyn when they did the retrospective. And I went and I saw Thief, Black Hat Director's Cut. I did not see The Keep. The Insider. I saw as many as I could. And then I saw Heat on the big screen. And I was like, oh my God. I've seen this movie 20 times and I hadn't seen it in a decade. And then I heard about Blake's podcast and we became friends with Blake. And that he's played you guys have played such a big role in keeping this movie alive for people. And
Blake has.
Yeah, but I think just keeping Mike, I was in a joke earlier, this is the first podcast anyone's done about Heat. We did the first one.
But doesn't it say amazing. So much? There's not many films, and there are other podcasts out there that do this, but I don't know, and you even said this with Miami Nice, right? As much as we all love Miami Vice, and we're talking about the movie iteration, I love the show as well, but it doesn't necessarily warrant the same kind of minute-by-minute scrutiny. But there's a reason Blake chose this film to go into that level of microcosmic detail.
Because he's a psycho.
Yeah.
Plus, it warrants this level of analysis.
Yeah.
It actually could sustain it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Because it's that dense and detailed.
I would say as I've gotten older and I've become obsessed with Carl Theodor Dreyer, who's an influence on Michael Mann. He talks about his close-ups and Akira Kurosawa and how the cool of High and Low, which is maybe my favorite movie of all time. I don't know that Michael Mann is a Kurosawa head, but he almost has to be a Kurosawa head because there's so much of that.
He has to be.
Right. He may have mentioned it once, and I just can't remember.
I don't know. I've heard that he watches everything.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah,
and it's just this movie operates on another level. I think it's amazing, and even in rewatching it,
transcends not only the genre but almost the form.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I mean, it's it's almost beyond cinema. It's that. It's that strong as a piece of art that it's just, anyway.
Well, last thing I'll say,
I could lose my mind.
It's 4 hours later.
All right, let's move on.
The one thing I'll say is it's one of the few movies I've owned on VHS, DVD, and now 4K,
likewise.
Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I have to keep owning it.
And the
what
last
about the
thing,
Laserdisc?
Oh,
I missed that.
Didn't cross that bridge.
Unfortunately, we don't get the full loyalty
but that
card
would have been 16 discs, right? Couldn't a Laserdisc hold 14 minutes of a movie? It was not. But no Laserdisc. Yeah. Damn it, Katie.
But I did, to your point about seeing it theatrically as well, I did see it on the big screen as well in Westwood Village a few years ago with Man in Attendance.
Oh, wow.
And it does hit different. And literally hit different. The sound of the downtown gunfight is insane in the theater. It like you can feel it in your body.
Do you know that's the production audio?
Yeah,
Wow.
It's
crazy.
I mean,
I read this last time. I was watching.
the level of
I was
verisimilitude
watching
is
this
insane.
Making of last night, like pumping my fist, and my wife was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I just love this movie."
Oh my God.
Out of control. It's just so powerful, you know.
But you said it's very soulful, and I listened to the Mann commentary last night, and it's very powerful to listen to him, especially at the end when he's talking about these two men and how they are the most similar to each other. They are the most alike each other in the world, like in this world that he has created. But also, I think, not just in the cast of characters, but in the world of Heat, Hanna and McCauley, it's like they find their soulmate.
Yeah.
Well, and then, speaking to the dude's rock, and then I swear to God we can move forward. One of my Michael Mann is such a unique intellect because you can hear him in an interview with that amazing Chicago accent, talk about the theory value of labor, and then talk about how Chris is an existentialist and his big pictures on what the thematic ideas of the movie are. But you're also like, that guy could kick my fucking ass. And he's 83 years old. He's all of these things. He's this incredibly smart, tough dude. And I feel like that kind of guy, I equate this a little bit to a Bernie Sanders. They don't exist anymore. These working class intellectual types who've completely pioneered this new thing. He's very special. Anyway, can we get some top line facts?
Let's do it. Let's do fast facts for Heat, which was released in the US by Warner Brothers on December 15th, 1995. Is Heat a Christmas movie? 3 weeks after our last film, Nick of Time, November 22nd, 1995. Written and directed, of course, by Michael Mann. You might have heard of him. Who also produced along with Art Linson. It stars Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Val Kilmer, and a supporting cast so incredible it would take up the whole podcast to list them all, but don't worry, we will get into them later. On an estimated budget of $60 million, it grossed $187.4 million. But interestingly, when it came out, it was kind of it was a hit, but didn't win any Oscars. It didn't have the footprint at the time. Well, I don't think people realized, no, a new American classic just came out and rocked the world. It was it was a solid, really, really good movie. But
do you remember
its reputation
it coming
is
out?
enhanced
No,
over time.
absolutely not.
I have no memory of it coming out. It's weird. You do, obviously, because you went and saw it.
But,
I mean, I have reasons why I didn't know. I'm from the Virgin Islands. I don't even know if it came to the movie theater there. And we were hit by a very big hurricane. Months prior. So I didn't have power for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it may have come months later.
Okay.
Because we got things kind of late.
In general.
Yeah. It might have gotten to the theater in January. But unlike your parents, I was very sheltered. My parents would not let me watch anything with violence or guns.
Okay.
My mom strongly objected to The River Wild.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's a psychologically intense movie. I mean, I kind of understand. It's painful to watch that movie.
It had that 90s trope of children being traumatized that we just discussed at length in Nick of Time.
I think it was children being traumatized, but she was like, oh my God, there's a single gun.
Okay.
You can't watch this.
They wouldn't have Heat.
Now you're like, Mom, want to watch Heat?
Oh God, I got really into horror in high school. Not to give my whole bio, but
it's great.
I got really into horror, and she would be like, why? I don't understand. She just doesn't get it.
My mom is like that a little bit. God bless her.
But if there's any sex in movies, she's like, actually, you need to learn about this.
Oh, my Irish Catholic parents were very much the opposite of that. It's got guns, cool. That's a penis.
Anywho.
Fortunately, Heat has both.
Yes. Like Al Pacino's giant face making out with Diane Venora.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the Die Hard DNA?
Let's do
This
it.
is a podcast about Die Hard, actually, and how it connects to great movies.
Now, there are some people out there whose names might be, like Howard, for example, who might be saying, well, come on, guys, in an Australian accent, which I'm not going to do. What's this got to do with jolly old Die Hard, you know?
Why is Blake British now?
Because I'm doing his voice, and I don't want to do an impression of him. But people might be wondering, okay, but it's not really an action movie necessarily. It's not one of these Die Hard corollaries that we've been doing. It's not a classic Die Hard on a blank film. But yet, I would submit that it does contain a lot of Die Hard DNA.
Give it to us.
So, first of all, it's an LA heist movie, right? Where you have a hero who's an incredibly smart, determined police detective and a villain who's an incredibly cunning and ruthless thief. It's a high-stakes cat-and-mouse game, right, between two adversaries who rarely interact in the same physical space.
Ooh, true.
Right? But when they do, those scenes are iconic, all right? Exhibit A, the Bill Clay scene in Die Hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when Rickman and Willis finally get together, that's like one of the most electric scenes in the movie. Likewise, with the diner scene with Pacino and De Niro, they're also structurally around the same position in the film. Sort of end of Act 2, moving into Act 3, they finally interact. They have their little tete-a-tete. They figure each other out a little bit. It's a little bit of an acting duel, a little bit of a psychological duel. They both gain a little bit of intelligence about the other guy, which is actually the underriding motivation for Pacino's character to do that, and it ends up paying off later when he sees Amy Brenneman's character in the car.
Oh, right.
And so he gets that little bit of like
Juice.
data that he needs for pattern recognition that actually helps him. That's part of his MO. It also has the protagonist-antagonist reversal, which is something that we actually come across quite a lot with heist films, because the villain, in quotes, I'm saying, that's a reductive term, but the De Niro character is the protagonist because he's the one driving the action forward in the way that Rickman is the one driving the action. He has an agenda. He has a purpose, Hans Gruber. The hero is the antagonist, is the one trying to stop them achieve that purpose. So it's actually similar in that regard. You also, again, have the villain, in quotes, working with this elite team of fellow thieves, all of whom have these different skill sets and personalities. It involves the theft of our favorite 90s, 80s trope bearer bonds, right, which feature prominently. We're still not totally sure what they are, even though I've done some research about it.
By that, do you mean you've just watched Lethal Weapon 2 over and over
No,
again?
they were Krugerrands.
You're right, they were
Krugerrands. Come on.
I keep doing that.
Diplomatic immunity. I had to do it.
Oh, my God. You're on a tear.
You have, I'm hyped up. I had a huge coffee and we're talking about heat. You also have the LAPD being attacked by criminals with military-grade weappery, right? Which is similar to what the terror thieves do. And finally, you have this they both have this large, sprawling ensemble cast where every part pops, no matter how small. So both of the movies have this kind of Shakespearean grandeur to them, even though they're about cops and thieves. So that is my thesis
Can I
statement.
submit one more
Please
DNA strand?
We want it, yes.
I fundamentally believe Heat is a movie about work-life balance and that it is impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go on.
And so is Die Hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about being obsessively professional to the point that your family relationships fall apart. Because McCauley tries to get a girlfriend and he ends up dead on the tarmac at LAX.
Well,
not only
the
that.
issue between McClane and Holly, isn't it? Like,
Yes.
very similar to the issues with Hanna and Justine.
Yeah, totally. I would say that's more of the analog relationship, Hanna and Justine. But, and De Niro is trying to be this like normal guy who can be a husband, but he can't. McCauley, I mean.
Well, and it's also resonant in the Dennis Haysbert storyline.
Yep, all of them have wives that they're like, Charlene and freaking Chris, yeah.
Yes, totally.
They're having issues. I mean, I think the only one who's actually achieved work-life balance is Cerrito.
Yeah, and well, then there's that great scene where he, I'll make a little marker there. There's that great scene when De Niro's like, You're set, man. You don't have to do this job. And then Sizemore says,
well, for me, the action is the juice.
and it's so tragic. Nice. Knew when that was good. That had to come at least once. It's so tragic because, like at that moment, because of the Shakespearean tragedy of this, he's dead. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is my other big takeaway that I caught on this viewing. And this was something that was around, but I hadn't quite kind of connected all the dots. Every character chooses their own fate in this film. If you think about it, they're all offered the chance to walk away. Like and mainly in that scene where they have the big tete-a-tete with Kilmer and Sizemore and Danny Trejo, and they all get together and they basically say, we should walk away. And they all decide for various reasons, like Kilmer said, the bank is worth the risk. He's got gambling debts or whatever, so he's going to do it. Chirito decides that action is the juice. He's going to do it. Trejo says, fuck it, we'll all do it. Voight tells De Niro explicitly, don't do this job. Vincent Hanna is a very, very elite, dedicated major crimes unit detective. He's all over you, and he blew away this other guy that we knew in Chicago. He literally says he blew him away. And what happens? He blows De Niro away.
Right.
Every single character, Dennis Haysbert's character, Breeden, chooses his own fate.
Mann says this on the track, on one of the, not in the track, sorry, in the documentary. He kind of says, like, I believe in like agency, essentially. He's like, this idea that, like, unfortunately something happened, or fortunately something happened. Like, fortune plays a very small part in it. It's all life choices, which
direct
is,
causality.
Again, the sort of philosophy of that guy played out. Do you want to give us some production history?
I do, yeah. So, because, to be clear, although there are these connections between the two movies, the origins of Heat do predate Die Hard and even its source material, the book Nothing Lasts Forever. The story is loosely based on a real-life encounter between a hardened criminal and former Alcatraz inmate who was actually named Neil McCauley and a Chicago major crimes detective named Chuck Adamson. And the real-life incident was during Adamson's pursuit and investigation of McCauley. The two did meet for coffee before Adamson ultimately tracked down and killed him in the aftermath of an armed robbery that his unit were surveilling. So Mann used this real-life incident as the basis for this 180-page feature screenplay that he wrote in 1979, originally planned only to produce it, and pursued Walter Hill to direct, which is really interesting.
God, that'd be interesting.
Can I just say I would love to see Walter Hill's Heat?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would love to see it.
He's coming up on the pod again soon.
Yes, we're going to do Last Man Standing. Yeah, I love Walter Hill.
I don't know.
But yeah, Walter Hill's films, I felt like they tend to have that, like, the rugged machismo side of it, for sure, but they don't necessarily have that quite the same humanism, I think, that Michael Mann has.
No, it'd be very fun, but it'd be a totally, it wouldn't be as existential or philosophical.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So he'd originally planned to only produce it, but then after the success of Miami Vice and Crime Story, he decided to adapt it for television and condense the story into this 90-minute TV pilot called LA Takedown that aired in 1989. I just want to do a quick sidebar on this because I watched it. Have you, either of you guys?
I've seen the trailer, and I know my father has seen it because I remember him, like, renting a VHS copy of it. I didn't watch it with him, though. I think it was before. I don't know. He seemed to, like, know about it before I did, which is weird.
It's pretty interesting if you're like a real Heat diehard, pun intended. Hanna is played by Scott Plank, who is an interesting guy. He was actually in the LA production of Hurly Burly alongside Sean Penn. Was quite a big theater guy. Neil McCauley, who's renamed Patrick McLaren in that version, is played by Alex MacArthur, an actor I really like, who was in William Friedkin's Rampage and Kiss the Girls with Heat alum Ashley Judd, and a movie I'm obsessed with. I think it's absolutely amazing.
You love Kiss the Girls.
I love Kiss the Girls.
I
Ashley
need to
Judd's character is
rewatch that.
Incredible in that film.
I remember really liking it when it came out.
It's so good.
Is Morgan Freeman in that one?
Morgan Freeman, Carrie Elwes, Brian Cox. Sort of, it's amazing.
I'm confusing this with Double Jeopardy.
Kiss the Girls, I think, is way superior.
They came out around the same time.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Well, she had a real niche with these.
Yeah, she did.
Like
love
elevated women
Judd.
in peril
She's
thrillers.
great.
She's
awesome.
so great.
We're definitely going to talk about her. But the rest of the cast included Michael Rooker, who played Bosco, the Ted Levine part. Daniel Baldwin played Schwartz. Xander Berkeley, who plays Ralph in the guy that Pacino's wife sleeps with. He plays Wayne.
Sit down!
He plays Waingro.
Amazing.
Xander Berkeley plays Waingro in the LA Takedown. And check this. Die Hard cast member Clarence Gilliard Jr., who plays Theo, is also in it as Mustafa Jackson, who I think is the Dennis Haysbert part.
Oh.
The most interesting thing about LA Takedown, though, is the ending, because the ending is different. What happens is Patrick McLaren, the McCauley character, goes to kill Waingro at the hotel, but it's set up as a trap by Vincent Hanna. And just as he's about to go and knock on the door, like, Hanna and the team pop out and pull guns on him. And then while he is, like, startled by that, Waingro shotguns him through the door. So Waingro actually kills him, and he dies in Hanna's arms. It's quite moving.
Whoa!
And he basically says, he says, Hanna says to him, "Why did you come here? Why did you fall for this?" It's so interesting because he's like, "We set this trap for you, but you were smarter than this," and it's quite moving. Then, so he dies in his arms in the corridor of the hotel. Then Hanna goes into the room, and Waingro's like, "I surrender, I surrender," and Hanna hates Waingro, and
because he's in love with Neil McCauley.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Patrick, why are there always Irish names?
A lot bit.
Yeah,
well, check this.
A lot bit.
They get into an argument, and because Waingro thinks he's like, "Oh, it was self-defense, and I've made a deal," and Hanna is like furious at him, and Waingro ends up saying, like, "I'm not going down," pulls a gun, and Hanna ends up like karate kicking him through the window of the hotel where he falls to his death a la Hans Gruber.
Amazing.
I shit you not.
I gotta watch this thing.
So it's available on it's pretty easy to find, if you know what I'm saying.
I mean, like I go to your house and we watch it together?
But yeah, so the network were unhappy with Scott Plank as the lead actor. They wanted Mann to recast the role. He declined, which shows quite a lot of integrity. I really like Scott Plank in the part. Actually, he's quite William Peterson-esque in like Manhunter. He has that sort of he's quite a peacocky, kind of dude.
Yeah,
like it's quite. It'd be interesting for you to check it out because it's quite a sort of sexy character, and there's how there's quite a lot of heat between Hanna and his girlfriend. Right, like that's a big part of it, right? It's like the chemistry of it, and there's a whole subplot about that. Anyway, the project it didn't get released, so because Mann wouldn't recast it, so they instead released it as a TV movie, aired on NBC August 27, 1989, and then several years later, it was revived with the help of Art Linson, who convinced Mann, like, "You're crazy, you need to direct this movie yourself," and they went after Pacino and De Niro, and they both said yes, and the rest is history. So that's the kind of brief backstory of the slightly tortured path. Kind of wild to think, like, what if this had got picked up as a show? We never would have had this movie. It just goes to show how in life, speaking of like causality or fortune, sometimes these things like break another way, and you think it's like really bad, but down the road, if LA Takedown had got picked up, we never would have had like one of the greatest movies ever made.
I think we can slot this into the category of directors remaking their own movies. Like Hitchcock remade his own movie. Who else? Other people have.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Oh, geez, I'm sort of escaping me in the moment. But Kurosawa made what is the name of the film? He made Ran, but before he made Ran, he made Kagemusha to prove that he could make Ran.
Okay.
Right, like Kagemusha, which is a fucking amazing movie. He was like, I have to practice.
Right.
And then he makes Ran, which I don't know if you guys have seen it.
I love Ran. It's a masterpiece.
I think it's the greatest movie ever made. I mean, talk about it. Have you seen Ran?
I think I saw it because I did a Shakespeare course at university.
It's basically King Lear.
It's King Lear on film, yeah.
And
it was like 20 years ago.
It's like a movie that, like, similar to this, that inspires like a kind of silence in yourself as a person, that you kind of go like, I've just like seen a Titanic work of art. Anyway, I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
I also think that, what I love about this movie, and I think it's true, is that Mann essentially this in a way is the result of so much documentary work. Like, he's not making things up. He's taking real life encounters and real stories and turning them into this movie. And like he says at some point, like in one of the bonus features, like, I couldn't make this story up. I had to draw it from sources and people that I knew. And it's like a 25-year build and culmination.
Sometimes they need to marinate a bit.
Speaking of marinating, should we take a break? I don't know
what the hell was that as a transition.
Look, I'm just trying to make it happen here. Okay?
All right. We'll be right back.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.
And we're back with our next section, Anatomy of an Action Movie, where we explore the tenets.
We live in a twilight world.
And my friends, it does. of an action
Katie,
movie.
Tenant head?
No.
Okay, moving on. All right. Someday my prince will come.
We did see it last week.
It was amazing.
In 70mm. It was incredible.
I couldn't.
Enough
My
said.
soul left my
It
body
was amazing.
numerous times.
It was amazing. Okay, so
And I don't care who knows it.
let's start with the premise of this movie. The first tenet is the premise, and the premise of Heat is thus: when a team of elite professional thieves led by Neil McCauley, played by Robert De Niro, pull off an audacious armored car robbery that leaves 3 guards dead, hard-charging LA robbery-homicide detective Vincent Hanna, played by Al Pacino, is assigned to the case. In the process of investigating and surveilling the culprits, Hanna comes to admire McCauley's tremendous skill and discipline, and even starts to identify with him personally while still pursuing him and his crew relentlessly across the city of Los Angeles. It was quite an interesting thing to distill it into its core essence, because there's so many threads to it, but I felt that was sort of fundamentally at its core, what was going on there. I don't know if there's too much to say beyond your point about it's on face level it's a classic kind of cops and robbers story, but because it's derived from a real life incident and the nuances that come from that kind of research, it has that something different about it. But what makes it special from a storytelling standpoint, do you think? From a concept standpoint and the execution of that concept, what makes Heat so resonant?
I think that, Mann is known for doing these huge dossiers, and we're talking on character, and we're talking about how these people are based on real people. And of course, it's sort of like there's an element of, you'd have to know the behind the scenes. But I still think it's really rich in character and in writing. Like when McCauley meets Edie and she's like, "Oh, where are you from?" And he says, "Bay Area." And you'd be like, "Oh, he's was in Alcatraz," right? or wherever, San Quentin or something. But I think that there's just a real economy of communicating certain things about character, and I think that comes from the script, but also the performances. And we don't necessarily know all of this backstory, but the actors do and the director does, and so I think that informs a lot of it. Even Ashley Judd's character has this crazy long dossier about her background, and I think that she comes through her. It's not that we know the facts of her backstory, but the way that her backstory informs her actions now, I think comes through really well.
It's a classic kind of tip of the iceberg movie.
Yeah, tip of the iceberg, yeah.
Right? We see the tip of the iceberg with every character, but there is an iceberg beneath every single one of them that goes back to, as you say, he builds these insanely detailed dossiers for all their backstories. And that's just not many people would have the knowledge, the discipline, and the luxury of the time and effort to do that for films.
Well, and I think,
but it shines through.
It does, and I think this may be a nice way to get us into talking about Pacino and De Niro on this. But one of my favorite facts, and it's something that I think a lot of people know, is that when they're shooting the scene, when they have coffee, Mann set up 2 over-the-shoulder shots and a wide, and the whole thing plays in these over-the-shoulders. But crucially, he's shooting both sides at the same time. So De Niro's take 11 is Al Pacino's take 11. And that's what he used for almost the entire scene.
Oh, wow.
And I think what's so particular about that is when you cut a movie, you're sort of like, okay, we got Phil here. Let's pull, we like parts of Phil's 3, 7, and 11. Let's use those sides. And then for Liam's, we got the 2, 8, and the 9 or whatever. And as a typical audience member, and really anyone, you're watching that and you're kind of going okay, whatever. I'm not someone who's maybe going to notice that every time. But what I think happens with him using the same take of both of them is it respects what actually happened in the moment between these 2 actors and characters in a way that transcends what we think of as filmmaking traditionally, right? It's all about when you're editing, you're okay, we got to pull the best elements to make this thing punch. But I think he recognizes a connection between 2 people. So having their actual when Pacino moves in one take, he's moving in the other take, and it all cuts together. I watched it 3 times after I heard him say this, and it's really amazing. De Niro moves his head, and Pacino moves his head, and De Niro taps the table, and Pacino notices it, and or whatever the case might be, and it's like it's because he was like, what matters is the connection. It's not like, is this the best Pacino or De Niro's? Like, it probably is also that, but like, he really respects, and that is the iceberg work, right? That's like the layer of like, I spent 20 years researching this character. I know all about the real Neil McCauley. I've rewritten the script. I've made this whole movie, and it's all to meet this moment, which is like one of the most iconic, important scenes maybe in
That's
movie
real Meisner
history.
stuff as well, isn't it? Right?
It's really
like,
respecting the craft.
It's just amazing. Sometimes I just think like, isn't it amazing that we were given this gift, like for time to be like the two greatest actors of their generation did this scene that is the culmination of like all of this build-up, both on and off screen, and they have that take of it. And as you've just said, that it's actually the real take.
Yeah.
It's not chopped together. And we have that for posterity.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that amazing?
It captures a moment that really happened.
It's so awesome about cinema. But let's move on to, because I know that Katie wanted to make some points about Al Pacino, our hero, in quotes, Al Pacino as Vincent Hanna. My question initially, but take this wherever you want, was what makes this character like unique and distinct from hundreds of other cop characters that we've seen? And what is it you love so much about Pacino's performance?
He's fucking wild. This man is on one. I mean, I think
He's on something.
Yeah, he's chipping cocaine. I love that. Like, I feel like every take they used was like Al's wild one, because obviously great ass is a wild one. But I think one of my favorite moments is when he goes to see Albert, and I feel like I have to move away from the mic. He's like, "Give me a haircut!" Like, it's the most unhinged interaction where you're like, why would a police detective be acting like this?
The song he sings, I can't remember. He'll be
When I
there
get
by
to
the
Phoenix.
door.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's unhinged.
He's unhinged, and I just, he's so wacky. I love, it's operatic. It's, and usually we're seeing these action heroes be very stoic, be very like reserved, tough, masculine, macho, and he is just like, he's out flapping in the breeze, doing something. I love him.
Well, he's so special too. I mean, Al Pacino obviously is so special, but it's such a special part. And like, I was thinking about how like as a kid, my dad would always talk about Al Pacino and The Godfather. And then people my age, we got like, there's a lot of great movies, of course, that he did, but like two that really stick out to me are, and they're close together, Donnie Brasco and Heat. In Donnie Brasco, he has this moment at the end. Have you guys seen Donnie Brasco?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
At the end of the movie, with no spoiler,
Spoil it,
he
I don't care.
knows that he's going to get whacked. He's going to get shot. And he is leaving the house, and he stops, and he reaches over, and he opens a drawer, like a little bit, and then walks away. And I've always thought, from what I understand, that was not in the script. But what it indicates is like he's telling his wife, like, this is where the money is, or this is where the keys are. Like, he's leaving this little footprints because he knows he's not coming back. And he's so subtle in that movie and so hangdog. And then to see him turn around and do this.
Yeah.
Where he's amazing. And it's just like such a, you give Al Pacino the runway to do that. Especially because he's existing in contrast to Robert De Niro. Who's an iceberg, speaking of, stoic and so, formula.
It goes back to the
driven.
old fire and ice thing that we've talked about a lot, right? How you have to have, and this is almost one of the best examples of that ever. That essentially, if one character is leans in a certain direction in terms of their personality type, you want a contrast with your hero and villain, or protagonist or antagonist, right? Like we talked about with Batman and Joker in Dark Knight. It's actually the inverse of it. Like Joker is the fire, and Batman is the ice, right? The other thing that I think is really interesting, though, about what makes this special, and these are the things that you don't necessarily get from your reading in the film, because you're just the first readings where you're just like, oh, this guy is just like a wild card and almost a tactical loose cannon to some extent. But when you learn all of the research, you realize that the reason he's doing these things, like why he's like, give me all you got! Give me all you got! It's because he's intentionally trying to rattle the informant, right? And it's actually, there's a psychological motivation that is very intentional. And it reminds me a lot of like Popeye Doyle in French Connection was also heavily researched and based on,
oh my God, he's
on
amazing
real
in that,
guys,
yeah.
you know, with the whole like, did you pick your feet in Poughkeepsie and all of that stuff, which they do. So the informant feels like, they're trying to fit me up for something else that I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about.
Right.
So I better give up the information I do know about this other thing. So these are all actual police tactics. But you also happen to have the intersection of the best actor on the planet to play a character that does that, right? Like Pacino, when Pacino wants to go big, it's like, holy Toledo. Somebody
I don't want to talk about him like he's a clown or something. I mean, he's also like so deeply soulful, I think, at the end.
Right.
It's so the look on his face is so tragic. The final look
that's
that we're
etched
seeing.
into my brain.
Yeah.
The way his face is lit.
He's so deeply empathetic, and that is almost his downfall. He wants to save everyone.
Yes.
And it's not his downfall because he doesn't, but it could be because he has to save everyone. It's the downfall of his marriage, you know, when he's like, I've got bodies on the street. I don't care if the chicken got overcooked.
But the reading of that line is amazing because he goes, I'm sorry that, and he realizes what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he like puts the chicken down and it goes from like the gimme all you at the beginning of the line to like, I'm a fucking asshole in this moment. Like I'm justified in what I'm doing, but also like, why am I being a jerk to my wife right now? Like it's amazing, the transformation that
he has
happens in that
empathy
line.
for everyone kind of except himself.
Yes.
And he's giving all of himself to everyone else.
Right. And not to his wife.
No, and not to his
right?
wife.
Like,
Yeah.
You know, but it's so, like, it's no accident that in LA Takedown, it does still have the scene where Wayne Grow murders the young sex worker and Hannah comforts the mother because he's still dialed, he hasn't lost his humanity in the horrors of homicide investigations. He feels her anguish and her agony and comforts her.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that was in that. I think it's really telling that that's also in LA Takedown, which excised so much, you know, but kept that because it felt that was obviously fundamental to Hannah's character.
Yeah.
You know, that sense of social justice and that deep, deep empathy. Neil McCauley, moving on, doesn't have empathy, right? Right. And you know, my question for you guys about this, so moving on to our section about the villain, Robert De Niro as Neil McCauley, of course, he's not necessarily a traditional villain. Phenomenal character, right? But he has none of the wit or charm or playfulness of Hans Gruber, right? Fellow exceptional thief. So why are we so captivated by this cold, ruthless sociopath?
I mean, it's interesting because at first I was like, I don't think he's a sociopath, but I think that term is a little weird. I don't think he's a psychopath.
No. It's different.
Wayne Grow is. Probably.
Wayne Grow is a psychopath. And sociopath is sort of like your environment shaped you, right?
Right.
And I think I don't want to get too much into like Heat 2, the book, or like stuff outside of the film, but you get the sense that McCauley has been shaped and hardened by really unfortunate circumstances in his life and in his childhood, and that he can only lead a life of crime. It's the only thing he knows how to do. It's the only thing he can do. And that the only way he succeeds is through extreme control. So you can kind of see, I mean, even just in his relationship with Edie, you can kind of see that he's really trying to be normal, but he can't.
He's amazing when he realizes how terrible he is to her, and that why are you so concerned about who I am and what I do, that thing. And he realizes
it's like
in
his
the
defense mechanism, isn't it? It's like a reflex, like keep away from me. Everyone, you know, don't look at me too long.
You can tell that he is like, yes, a ruthless sociopath. And in the commentary, Mann, in the shootout, Mann's like, Vincent is an empath, and or he's empathetic because and he says, McCauley is a sociopath. He cares about Chris, but he doesn't care about anyone else.
Exactly.
So he tries to save Chris and then shoots up a bunch of random people on the street, and then Hannah's scrambling to save everybody on the street.
Right.
The innocent
Pushing them
bystanders.
down and stuff.
Yeah. So that's just like a action moment where their character is being revealed. But he does care about Chris. But I also think that, like, he's just such a highly controlled person. And then you get a wild card like Waingro. And it's like, what happens when you get that element of chaos mixed into his highly controlled world?
Well, and I also think, like, if you watch every modern Mann movie, there's one phrase that you hear again and again and again and again, which is Gladiator Academy.
Yes.
Right? And, like, it's because I think, like, one of his great themes is institutionalization, right? You get institutionalized as a young kid.
He's obsessed with that. He's obsessed with, like, violent, institutionalized childhood.
Jericho Mile, right?
And Public Enemy. Like, Public Enemies has this theme, too. And I bring it up because I think that, like, one thing that makes De Niro McCauley, I should say, empathetic is his desire to transcend his institutionalization, right? So the idea that he's like been, the real guy was in jail for 25 years by the time he's like 40, right? Like the decision to be like, I cannot go back. I can do better than that. And I have to do it through this very specific way of living, which is I'm not stealing your money. I'm stealing the bank's money. Fuck the institution. I'm taking their money is kind of empathetic. It's that whole idea that that this movie has is that like the grill cook is trying to transcend being in jail, right? Or trying to transcend the fact that he's institutionalized. And the first thing that happens to him with that piece of shit at the deli is like, I take 25% of your take home and clean the bathrooms.
So you mean Bud Court?
Bud Court. That's right. God, I forgot it was Bud Court. Right. No offense to Bud Court. But it's like everyone in this movie is trying to transcend their institutionalization, right? And that's what makes De Niro so special, is that the character is that he has to live by this code, which like Chris has no code. Chris is all impulse and instinct, right?
Yeah,
like,
he's kind of like all.
And Mann makes this point that that's how he survives because he can adapt.
Yep. Instead
McCauley
of
can't adapt.
Yeah.
And that's institutionalization. And it's tragic, right? Because like he wants to do better, I think, but he wants to do it on his terms. And that's what makes the world challenging, right? Is like everyone's coming at it from a certain perspective.
The fact that he is a control freak is his downfall.
Right.
Because he leaves Edie in the car at the airport and goes to kill Waingro. And that is absolutely the wrong choice to make in that moment. But he can't live with something being out of place.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like that chaos element.
It's a loose end, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a loose end. Like that just, it would sort of eat at you, knowing that Waingro is out there.
Well, and every time you watch the movie, you're like, don't get off the highway. Don't get off the highway. Don't get off the highway. And you know he's going to get off the highway.
Yeah.
But it's so powerful because you're like, you can make a difference.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, something I heard Mann say was like these guys, when they're institutionalized, he said, for example, they might read Marx, and I'm quoting what he said, and come to the conclusion that property is theft, which would change their relationship towards things like their own property, and hence De Niro maybe not having any. And also the idea that things are there for the taking, and it's all a bullshit con game anyway.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was so interesting as well. The idea of that you tapped into something. This is why this film is so amazing, because you just spot little details. The nature of his living situation makes so much sense when you think that he's been institutionalized. Therefore, he doesn't have much need for anything beyond the basic utilitarian items in his house.
Yeah.
And I know that that came from that painting as well. That was like that mood. I forget the name of it, but it was
Well, Black Hat does this. You see Chris Hemsworth's prison cell, and it's full of philosophy books, right? Like he's become a philosopher, right? You don't do the time. The time doesn't do you. You do the time, right? Which is like definitely a thing that people who are institutionalized say, right? Like it's all about how you spend time, and that's what he says. He has this dream where he's drowning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think that's about? Not having enough time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The whole movie's about time.
Time is luck, baby.
This movie
that
rules.
Comes up more than once.
You know what else?
That's one of Mann's
guys in
things,
Miami
right?
Vice, famously.
Yep.
You know what else is true? Is the action is the juice. Sorry, I felt like I had to say it.
Time is luck. The action is the juice. You can't negotiate with gravity. That's
Oh my
also
God.
a Miami Vice line. But yeah, no, he's obsessed with time. And also, I would say one of these, just to tag on this, Vincent Collateral.
Yeah.
Which is what we call Tom Cruise's character in Collateral.
That's his last name. Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
asked Stuart Beatty. I said, "Is that his last name?" He said, "Yes."
Wow.
I didn't ask Michael Mann that though, but he Vincent Collateral also comes from a violent institutionalized background and is like quoting Nietzsche and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So.
it's one of my favorite things about these movies is that like clearly Mann has read all this stuff and understood it, which is amazing unto itself. And he's like, I'm going to put it in an action movie. Like it's really special stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our next section about the ladies of Heat, the women of Heat, because there are so many extraordinary women in this film. So many brilliant actresses playing all of these complex characters that are integral to this epic saga. Ashley Judd as Charlene Shahirl, as Diane Venora, as Justine, Amy Brenneman as Edie, Natalie Portman, young Natalie Portman, I think in only her second major screen role as Lauren. I thought Kim Staunton, who plays Lillian, who's married to Dennis Haysbert.
Oh my God,
character,
amazing.
So good,
Amazing performance.
Yeah. She's in 3 scenes of this movie.
The
right?
way that the
and you remember
bartender
her.
ignores her and the look on her face is like, it's like her whole life is in this moment. She's amazing. Does so much with so little. And a brief but gut-wrenching performance from Hazel Goodman as the mother of the young sex worker that Waingro murders. The sound of her crying is etched into me forever. So what do we think about the female characters in Heat? Are there any characters that we're particularly drawn to or interested in? Standout performances? Just kick it over to.
I mean, one thing I always appreciate about Michael Mann is that he always has adult relationships in his movies. They feel very real. I think the sex scenes always feel very adult and real, and that, you know, I one of the reasons why I love Ferrari so much is because he's finally just making a straight up marriage melodrama,
Right.
And you know, I mean, we talk about it in Miami Vice all the time, like it's just a love story. But yeah, so I really appreciate especially the Diane Venora Al Pacino relationship. It feels very real to me. And obviously Ashley Judd is incredible. And you understand why Chris and Charlene would be together, and that also she is so street smart and savvy. She knows all the money stuff. She knows just wants to take care of her kid. And I love when she tells Chris to go at the end and she gives him the hand signal. And that also to me indicates like that's like a kind of a like from Blackjack or something.
Yeah,
where you're
totally.
like, I'm done. Or what does it mean?
I never thought of that before.
It's
That's
a
their whole
gambling thing.
backstory.
Yeah, it's Vegas.
In one
yes.
nuanced gesture.
Right, just the Vegas, right, from the book.
Because
He too, they meet in Vegas. Sorry to talk about
she
He too.
would
but
accompany high rolling gamblers and stuff. So it's like it's a classic iceberg example.
right. So that that she's using a gambling motion indicates where she comes from, what the language that she and Chris speak. He's a gambler, you know, and her face in that moment is so great. I have to say though, I don't like Edie.
Really?
I don't like Amy Brenneman. I do not buy that relationship for a second. I'm sorry. I just am like, these two would never get together.
This is a criticism I've actually heard a lot.
I just don't see that. I just don't see. I don't buy it. But I mean, that's not to say that her performance is not good or that De Niro doesn't sell it. Those two characters getting together does not make sense to me.
You know, interestingly, when she read the script, she did not like it.
Well, Amy.
And she was like, these people are sociopaths. I hate them. I want nothing to do with them. And when she told Michael Mann that, he was like, then you have to be.
He was like, you're perfect.
Yeah, you're perfect. Because like, I need that like moral realness, whatever you want to say, right? Like, yeah. Because it's very easy. One of the great things about this movie is at the end, you're like, I hope that sociopath gets away from the cop chasing him. Like,
right. But also, what happens when they get on the plane? Where are they going? What life are they living?
That's
like,
totally
how
true.
long does it last? 2 weeks max.
Right. No, that's really interesting.
In Fiji or wherever they're
so
going
maybe to him, she represents an escape but not a reality. Like, he might not be capable of like making a normal life. What's a normal life? Ball games and barbecues, you know? Like,
she represents like a fantasy, like what he thinks and hopes he can have. I mean, maybe I'm talking myself into liking this character, but I just have always been like, those two would never get together.
Those two kids.
I look at that as a little bit like it's the drug of love, a little bit, that's making them make illogical decisions.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because for whatever reason, they're both deeply lonely.
Yeah.
You know, and she's unguarded about that in a way that makes her so endearing and striking for De Niro's character because he's the opposite of that, because everything is about being on guard. And then he meets this woman who disarms him because she's like, yeah, I get lonely, and yeah, I'm like laying it on the table and about where I'm at emotionally, and it just penetrates his armor. I don't know, maybe I'm a romantic, so for me, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's fair criticism.
I don't buy her hitting on that man in that bookstore.
Yeah.
But, but she is very lonely. So she's like kind of seeking out, whoever she can, maybe a fellow
and he asked her, right. He's like, can you pass the salt or sugar or whatever it is?
Cream
and
or
like,
something.
cream. And it's like, that's an open... Remember when we had open cream that you could share with people
That's
at table?
also in Thief, by the way.
Yes, it is. You're right.
And he's kind of rude about it. He's like, pass the cream.
Yeah, well, no, totally. But it's
I'd be like, fuck off.
It's an open window, and
that's why I'm not dating a criminal mastermind.
Probably for the best.
But it opens him up, and you're right. She's so lonely,
Yeah.
She's so lonely.
But when you
it's
move
kind
to
of a one-night
LA
stand. It's initially a one-night stand until he goes to
Yes.
dinner with the rest of the crew.
Right.
And he's like, I'm lonely again.
He's like, I'm the only single person at the dinner.
So maybe it's self-deception. I mean, that's an interesting element of a guy who lives by a code, is he's deceiving himself into thinking, I can do both, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's deceiving himself.
Right.
He's trying to have work-life balance.
Totally.
But this film is about loneliness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Amongst many other things. They're all lonely characters looking for connection. And that's the beauty of the whole thing, is that the only two people that truly understand each other are De Niro and Pacino.
Yeah.
Everyone else can't connect. Or if they can connect, they can't make it work in the work-life balance because of the pressures of life and the pressures of this world and economics and all these other things. The only two people that truly understand and are balanced about that. And it's non-romantic, it's non-sexual, it's just a truly deep spiritual understanding of what drives a person, what makes them tick.
And that also
brings De Niro's characters.
It also brings me back to the thing that I mentioned earlier, which is the restaurant scene is all take 11. Like, he needed it to feel connected, like a primal connection between these two guys, and the fact that it's two shots repeated over and over again.
It's yin and yang as well, isn't it? It's great. I mean, it's just this movie.
Should we talk about the action? Should we talk about the action, which is the juice?
Yes, it is. It certainly is. So, obviously, this is fundamentally, as we were discussing, this is a thoughtful crime saga about people and relationships. But it is interesting to talk about it in terms of being an action movie because it does meet the criteria of an action movie. And we're going to kind of have this debate on another podcast imminently about our favorite action movies.
See you soon, Chris Tapley.
So look out for that on 50 Miles Per Hour. We're going to talk about this explicitly. But for example, I just rewatched Mission Impossible, the original, which is amazing. But this has more action than Mission Impossible, the original, way more. Mission Impossible only has like a little bit of action at the beginning, the heist in the middle, which isn't really an action sequence per se. It's more of a suspense sequence. And then you do have the big finale
on the train.
But the rest of the movie is not action driven. It's a De Palma movie. It's suspense driven. This film has like 4 amazing action sequences, at least that I caught. Do you guys have do you want me to list them, or do you want me to just say what?
List them.
I mean, okay, so we've got the opening car heist, armored car heist. Right. Ramming a giant truck into an armored car to flip it.
Rock.
Right. You got that. You got the shootout at the drive-in movie theater involving where Kilmer's sniping a dude from 200 yards away.
That's so good.
And all of that. And then Sizemore comes around the corner with the shotgun and the car bouncing and, amazing action sequence. Then you've got one of the all-time bangers, the downtown LA bank heist and aftermath, arguably the most realistic urban shootout ever captured on film. And then the final showdown at the airport, right? So this has 4, including one. I mean, the bank heist feels like it goes on for 10, 15 minutes.
I'd say it's 15, 20 minutes.
Of sustained action. So this is, by definition, an action movie, even if vibe-wise it doesn't feel like it.
You heard it here.
I would say.
I would actually call this an action movie. I don't have any problem calling it an action movie. Although everyone calls it a crime saga.
That's just what the paper said.
No, but I feel like everyone calls it a crime saga.
Yeah, I mean, it also has the narrative beats of an action movie, right? Like, set against this, like, now if it was made to be a 10-episode Netflix series, right? Like, it has all these component parts that work so well together. It's like a symphony.
Yes.
The bank heist is the best action sequence maybe in top 10 movie history, right?
Yeah, it's got to be the bank heist for my favorite.
I don't know what else to say here. I mean, that's it rules. And it's also, I watched it twice to prep for that sequence, and it's so respectful of time and place and feeling like we're following them in a certain direction, and it's just so well staged and so referenced by so many movies that came after it.
It's been ripped off a million times.
Yeah, like The Dark Knight is a huge ripoff.
Never bettered. Like pretty much everything in this film.
Never bettered, yeah.
Hugely influential, but never bettered. And, to the point we talked about the verisimilitude earlier, I discovered this incredible detail, so Michael Mann, that they were like, the big bullet holes that are in the cars when they're shooting.
Yeah. I know what you're talking
So apparently, would you want to say you know where I'm going?
With the squibs?
Yeah.
Yeah, they shot up the cars. They took the cars out to the desert and then they covered them over and then put squibs
in
them so that they look like real bullet holes. Because they are real bullet holes.
From the actual caliber of the guns that would do that.
Yeah, they shot the cars with huge guns.
I mean, there's no.
I'm like weirdly emotional hearing this, you guys.
It's the dedication to authenticity.
Yeah, it's a craft.
Yeah,
it's just unbelievable.
And, I was watching this at home last night, and I really was my soul left my body watching. I just was I'm so amazed by it because when you know how these things work and you know how hard it is to do this, it's just amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Fuck. Okay.
All right. Should we move on to our next section about the humor of this film?
Let's do it.
Do you guys have a favorite? We were going to come to our favorite lines in a bit, so there might be a little bit of crossover, but there is quite a lot of humor in this film, and there's quite an interesting balance between, I think, Pacino's outrageous, provocative humor and De Niro's dark, dry humor.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite funny moments?
I mean, I don't want to be hack and say great ass.
That's not hack. That moment, what? No.
But it is. But then also, I do think I can never get the line right where what do you want to know about me and what lady?
Oh,
what do you want to know about me?
Lady, why are you so interested in who I am and what I do?
Yes.
That's a great moment.
That's kind of like the funny dry line.
Totally. Yeah. I think a low-key funny moment, and God bless him, Danny Trejo, is when De Niro gives Tom Sizemore this, you got T-bonds, you're all set up. And he says, for me, the action is the juice. And it's very serious. And Kilmer's like, the bank is worth the risk. And then Trejo's like, yeah, sure. It's just very good. It's like,
fuck him.
And Trejo's we haven't talked about Trejo. I don't know if we're going to, but
go for it.
He kind of is on the peripheral a lot of this movie, unfortunately, but he's so memorable and he's so good. And now that he's kind of an LA institution, he plays himself to some extent in this movie. And it's another one of these examples of Michael Mann being the true life is more interesting than having this guy pretend to be whoever he is. Trejo has done it. He's real. And the throwaway, I think is really, really funny and really good.
What's your humorous moment?
Well, there's little bits, of course, the great ass moment's hilarious. And then, but just little Pacinoisms of who? What are you, a fucking owl?
You got killed walking in a ducky.
Yeah, all of that. The TV set
the
scene.
TV set
the
scene.
TV set scenes are made. That's
Poor
such a
Xander
hilarious
Berkeley.
scene.
Oh, it's so good.
Go ahead.
No, one other thing to that is that, what do you say I buy you a cup of coffee? Just the the way he leans in, hi. It's very, very funny.
I do. The dark humor moment that I really love is Tom Sizemore looking at the guy in the diner.
Oh,
chilling look.
You know.
Oh, it's so good.
So good. Also, just want to say, hottest Tom Sizemore has ever been.
He is very hot in this movie. Yeah.
I think everyone in this movie is the hottest they've ever been, except for Natalie Portman.
No, that's fair enough. No, it's true. And it's funny to watch who, Chuck Adamson, who's the bassist for Vince, for Hannah's character, in real life, is just a regular looking Chicago guy. Yep. And then you see him and then you juxtapose him with Al Pacino and you're like, damn, Al Pacino is fine in the 90s. This is a good looking guy.
So the styling is so cool as well. We talked about this with Tenet, the men's fashion of it as well. Just
billowing
everyone
suits.
is just
massive ties. Val Kilmer looks incredible in this movie.
He does. I have to say, I don't love the ponytail.
No?
It looks better when it's cut at the end,
Yeah.
to be fair.
I'm
He's
short
physically.
hair.
We could talk forever. He's physically amazing in that scene where he's been shot and his whole body is tensed up, and like
Kilmer's great.
Kilmer's great.
The other thing I just wanted to say that I thought was funny on the humor point is you've got a couple of brilliant comedic actors in serious roles here with like Hank Azaria and Jeremy Piven.
Yeah.
Fuck her. What an asshole. Man.
That's just an interesting choice. You know, it's funny when you think Mann is so serious to the point we talk about this thing with the squibs, but the film is funny. He does
funny.
He does have a great sense of humor, even though the films are often very, very intense and brooding.
I mean, Miami Vice is hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's really funny.
But I also think like he has a great eye for casting, and I think it's smart to cast comedic actors in straight roles because I think they just put a little different spin on it.
Yeah, I listened to an interesting Alexander Payne interview where he talked about casting Will Forte in Nebraska.
Oh,
he was like
amazing.
He was like he has the saddest face.
Yeah.
When he just exists, it's a sad face.
Love that
and that's what I
movie.
wanted. Should we do our Oscars?
Well, before we do, I had one last question, if I may, if we can just squeeze this in, which is because the other huge part of why this movie is so amazing is the sonic tapestry of this piece, which somehow gets all these disparate musical styles to coalesce. Do you guys have a favorite piece of music in this film?
It has to be the Moby.
it's the Moby.
It has to be the Moby.
Moby. Good job, Moby. I saw him outside a week ago.
Really?
You should have gone over
because
him.
there's a vegan restaurant next door. It's probably
That was
why.
the vegan spot.
I just have you guys seen? There's a comedian named Chris Fleming, and he has an amazing like 5-minute long video where he's just talking about heat.
No.
It's so funny. He's just talking
Write
about
it
it
down.
being.
I'm going to.
I can send it to you. It's
Please
just
do.
talking about how it's a romance between De Niro and Pacino. And then he's just describing the scenes at the end, and he's talking about the Moby song. And Chris Fleming is just anything he describes is funny. I will send you the video.
Please
Everyone,
do.
please watch it. Add it to the show notes or something. It's so funny.
We will.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the amazing like piece of music, Force Marker that plays over by Elliot Goldenthal that plays over the bank heist.
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard a piece of music like that in a film before or since.
Yeah.
That like it's so experimental percussion. But weirdly, for ages I was trying to find out what is the piece of music that plays over the sequence where Neil returns home after the heist and chases Edie up the hill because it's so haunting and ethereal and beautiful, and it's like fate is coming down on them and you feel. And for ages I was trying to like Shazam that to find the right thing, and then this week I finally found what it is.
What is it?
It's called Last Lagoon by William Orbit. And it's an exquisite piece of music.
How did you find it?
For
8-episode podcast series? Could get into that?
Yeah. All right. We can move on. We can move on. Anyway, I love the music of this film as yet another element that makes it.
Mann
just
has a
so
really
incredible,
interesting ear for music, and he puts sort of unexpected stuff.
I
in
think
his films.
deeply influential, too, because I feel like he does this electronic thing before a lot of other people
Yeah,
do it.
for sure.
The Tangerine Dream scores, like... Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to be Michael Mann.
Manhunter's quite similar in that regard. If it's like an eclectic soundtrack,
Yeah.
it hasn't aged quite as well as Heat has in that sense, in the soundtrack wise. But it's really interesting how he's able to get these disparate musical styles and make them kind of congruent.
like in a gotta be honey.
Oh my God.
That sequence is amazing.
You know, this movie got no Oscar nominations. So today we're going to fix that.
Yeah,
I
with
will
our
just say,
segment.
calling back to Blake, he always says that that Heat is unsullied by the Academy.
I actually think
Love
he's
that.
right. I
Yeah.
actually think that's
Yeah.
I think
a great point.
Yeah.
A lot of the best movies got no Oscar nominations.
Yeah.
Tenet got no.
Well, a la
put on our
Tenet,
tuxedos.
Let's go back in time to fix this. With the Die Hard Oscars, aka the Action Movie Awards, our first category is the John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line. I have 5 nominees, but I feel like you should just throw out like maybe what if you have one, unless you would prefer me to list
Do it.
the noms.
List them. List
Let's
them.
list them. It's easier for us.
What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone. Because there's a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Wow.
Strong contender.
That was good.
That's like funny as well. Kind of funny, right? Like
Yeah.
a dry humor, but
William
like
Fichtner.
chilling.
Amazing.
Chilling.
Yeah.
I could get killed for telling you this shit. Get killed walking your doggy. And then the iconic speech.
The way he chews gum and
Yeah. He doesn't want to be there. That's what I love about that scene. It's like, give me the fucking information. It's like 3 in the fucking morning.
Yeah.
Let's
like
go.
Koreatown getting
Give me the fucking information. The classic don't let yourself get attached to anything you're not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner speech. And it actually is 30 seconds exactly from when Neil realizes that Hannah's onto him to when he leaves Edie, if you time it, which is pretty wild.
Are you serious?
What?
Yeah. Don't waste my motherfucking time! And finally, well, you know, for me, the action is the juice. Those are my 5 picks.
Those are really good ones.
I like those. She's got a great ass.
That was what I was going to go with, but I think we're going to keep that in the humor category. My vote is for Heat Around the Corner.
Fair.
Yeah, I think
because it's just so iconic.
I also think a line that I love is I'm not lonely, I'm alone. Which De Niro says.
But then she says I'm lonely.
Do you think he's lying to himself when he
of course
says
he
that,
is.
right?
Yeah, of course. He's a human being.
Yeah. That's what makes it I know that like the subtext of that line.
I'm still stuck on the 30 seconds thing. Okay. Exceptional Thief Award.
The Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film. Holy cow. And like 20
25
names.
minutes.
We'll exclude the 3 leads, of course, because there are
you.
so many nominees, including Kilmer. We're not going to include him for this because he is one of the leads. I have like a bunch, but Ashley Judd as Charlene Shahurlis, McKelty Williamson as Sergeant Bobby Drucker, Diane Venora as Justine Hanna, John Voight as Nate from Nate's Bar, which is our bar, by the way. Have to come for a drink with us. Dennis Haysbert as Donald Breeden. Oh, what a heartbreaking character. Amy Brenneman as Edie and Tom Sizemore as Michael Chirito. We could go on all day, but do you guys have a favorite like supporting performance?
It changes every time I watch.
Yeah.
This time it was Ted Levine.
He's awesome in it.
He's so good in it.
I just love that Ted Levine does a different weird voice in every movie.
Yeah.
And he's doing a weird voice in this one.
That's a good choice.
Shout out to Bosco. Pour one out for Bosco.
Yeah.
Down the street.
Bosco.
The way he goes.
Downtown
it's
LA.
so sad. Noonan. I think Tom
Yeah,
Noonan is really
Tom
good.
Noonan
But I think
is
my pick is Dennis Haysbert because weirdly
Yes.
the thing that I think about this movie more than anything is when he dies and just his subplot and how sad it
Yeah.
is. And-
Amazing.
I am also just going to shout out Henry Rollins.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm coming to him in the next category, actually.
Okay.
So hold that thought. Holster that sidearm, Captain. It's the Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie. And we have 4 nominees.
Okay.
Starting with Henry Rollins
Unfair.
as enforcer turned informant Hugh Benny. William Fichtner as Van Zandt.
You and your friends are dead. Sorry, that's from The Dark Knight when he basically reprises this role. I had to think about.
Bud Cort as Solenko.
I can't
the
believe that's-
worst.
Yeah, he's bad. I don't even think I ever realized that was Bud
That's,
Cort until right now.
Dennis Haysbert's shitty boss at the diner for
Yeah.
anyone who didn't, because the character's never really named. And then, of course, finally, the dick of all dicks, Kevin Gage as Waingro.
I think it's got to be Wayne Grow.
Yeah, it's Wayne Grow. No, he's the biggest piece. He's the worst. He's the actual bad guy.
Yes.
Right,
I
in
love
the
how
world.
Mann called him like a contagion. Like a contagion
Yeah.
slipped out when they failed to kill him in the
Yeah.
He's
parking lot of
great
the
in this
diner.
movie.
He is good. He's also kind of hot.
He is. I was actually looking at pictures. I was reading his bio.
He was married
he's a
to Kelly
tough-
Preston.
He was
wasn't
married
at
to
one
Kelly
point?
Preston. Yeah.
What did you want to say about Henry Rollins? Because I think it's
just
interesting that he's
that
in it.
I love him. And when Blake first emailed me to do One Heat Minute before we were friends, I just said, I want a minute that has Henry Rollins in it. And he was like, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's
Are
good.
you a big Black Flag fan?
Yeah, I love Black Flag. I used to just Google image search Henry Rollins shorts.
Let's get on that. Get on that,
Just,
people.
You know, when I need a little break.
We need a little.
Okay. Fair.
When
fair.
when Max and Collateral has the little picture.
Yeah,
of-
yeah, yours.
Mine's is just Henry Rollins.
You
like
drive around in
writing
your
a
car
review,
with
you
that,
look
like
up, you
when you
put
need
that-
to have a mental vacation.
Back up.
Mental Vacation, Henry Rollins shorts. Highly recommend.
That's a really
Okay.
good
Google image.
I just think it's also just amazing that Henry Rollins shows up in this movie for like 8 minutes and has
I
like
know.
4
Tone
lines
lock
of dialogue.
as well, like-
Tone
Yeah,
lock.
Tone Loc, yeah.
Yeah.
Also hilarious that Pacino takes him down. Like when
Right.
he
Yeah.
when they burst into his apartment.
Oh, and he grabs his nose.
But like the size difference has got to be substantial.
He has to do
there.
it by going for the eyes and pulling his hair.
I
He
haven't
has to-
noticed, but apparently you can tell it's a stunt double
can.
that takes him
Yeah, you
down.
can.
Like I've
Right.
never noticed.
Well,
but like
it has to be.
Yeah, I know.
But it's just so fun. It's like the magic of the movies, baby. But I did read a fun little anecdote about how Pacino had to approve Rollins's casting, and they used to like have fun when he's handcuffed to the couch. Like Al would be like, "Get a marker. I'm going to draw a mustache on Henry's face."
I love that man.
I know. He was having fun.
We
It's
also haven't
Gage.
talked about Wes Studi as Casale, by the way.
He's so good.
Amazing.
And from Mohicans to this, such good casting.
This is such a good movie.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
All right. The final category is the best death, presented by. Is he here or is he
He's
not
here.
here?
He's here. So it's gonna get loud for a second. Give it to me. No more table. Next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate. I was gonna do a De Niro for that, but I decided not to.
We're always glad to have Marco
I hate
making
doing
an
that.
appearance. This film has a surprisingly huge body count.
Surprisingly.
Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of the films like Nick of Time we just did, and I think it was like only one death in it. So
Oh
it's
my
funny with
gosh.
some of these action movies. There's actually not many people killed. This one is quite the opposite. I've got 5 deaths that I caught as potentially best. Kilmer sniping the guy from long distance
Oh,
during
hell
the
yeah.
botched handoff at the drive-in. Sizemore being expertly iced by Pacino during the bank shootout while holding a child as a human shield. Yes, that's a sentence I just said. Trejo being mercy killed.
awful.
Oh, that's horrible to watch, isn't it? By De
Yeah.
Niro.
He's so good in that moment.
Oh,
Diana's
he's brilliant
gone.
performance.
Yeah, it's great.
Waingro being executed by De Niro at the
Look
hotel.
at me.
Look at me. Look at me. Look at
We
me.
gotta ice the impressions for the rest of the episode. Poor Katie.
And,
She's like, they just did impressions for an hour and 30 minutes.
We're sorry. We're excited. We're excited.
No, I love it. Keep going.
And then De Niro being taken down by Pacino at the airport.
That's it.
That's got to be it.
That's it. That's
Although,
what the movie.
I am pouring one out for my guy, Ted Levine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough.
Fallen in the streets of LA. Yeah.
Well, and the way he goes down is so convincing.
Yeah.
Just hits the
And
ground.
it's just that, and it's like a horrifying expression on his face.
And De Niro, I mean, Mann gives Pacino the second
Yeah.
of like going like
Recognition to like,
Yeah.
oh boy.
And then
And
you
he-
never hear him about him again.
Yeah, and he just
You know?
channels the
Yeah.
rage into the rest of the shootout. Okay, so we're going for the ending. By the way, this is the best ending in the history of cinema. Do we all agree that? Like,
No, Dirty Dancing. Sorry.
Okay.
So at the end,
Respectfully disagree.
at the end of Tenet, right? Robert Pattinson.
Okay.
Let's take a break.
And we're back with our final section of the show, the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz, where the scores can really change. That's the spirit, Liam. All right.
I love
so
it. I fucking love it.
The rules are simple. Three questions. You can choose to either compete or collaborate with Liam.
I'm triggered by trivia.
Me too.
Let's collaborate.
Oh, Katie.
Cool.
Be my consigliere.
I will.
Okay. So you get one clue for each question if you need it. You can phone a friend.
You ready to
aka
hear Phil's
you
game
can
show
call
voice?
Al
Yeah.
Pal. All right, here we go.
Do it.
All right, here we go. Which beloved actor and action star was originally offered the role of Chris Shiherlis?
Beloved actor and action star?
Yes.
I want a clue. Clue.
Yeah.
You want a
okay.
clue? Okay. He turned the part down to play the role of Hamlet at the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre in Canada.
Keanu Reeves.
What? He was?
Yeah.
Not off. Wow.
But can't you kind of see that? Like he's a sort of surfer criminal, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of the
true,
vibe
true,
of the
true.
character.
That would be really interesting.
I can kind of see it.
I think, though, that Swayze,
Swayze would have been sick in this movie.
Holy
yeah.
shit.
because Bodhi has that, like, psycho thing
Right.
going on.
But it's probably
Holy
too close
shit.
to
Yeah, too
bank
similar.
robbing.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp was also considered for the part
That
as
makes
well.
I see
but
that. I can see
Yeah.
that.
Kilmer has that great kind of like detachment.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
God
Amazing.
love him.
Love Val Kilmer.
God love him. All right. Question number 2. At this point in time, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro have now appeared in 4 films together. Can you name the other 3?
Yes.
Wait, what? Oh. Godfather 2?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
You go.
Righteous Kill,
Correct.
and The Irishman.
Correct.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
thought it was like up to this point in time.
Can we just briefly
Did I
side note?
mangle it?
No,
you got them right.
No, you said it. I
My wife can't tell them apart.
can't tell those two
Like,
men
she,
apart.
like I will hold. She'll be like, "Can we play the Al Pacino Robert De Niro game?" And I'll find a picture of Al Pacino. I'll hold it up. She'll be like, "That's Robert De Niro," and I'll be like, "No, it's Al Pacino." And she'll be like, ah. And then every so often I throw a Harvey Keitel in just to see what happens. But she
has face blindness for Italian men.
Was actually what she said once is, "I have face blindness for white men." But she once said to me, she was like, "I googled it, and a lot of particularly women have this problem. They can't tell Al Pacino and Robert De Niro apart." And I was
don't
like,
have that problem.
That's fascinating. Well, but then I started to think, like, maybe that's a low-key brilliant thing about this movie because there's two sides of the same coin. Like, the casting, just,
true.
maybe that is actually
Yeah,
weirdly
if it was
effective.
like a totally different type,
it
wouldn't have worked.
And they share so much, like, historic cinema DNA and roles and things like that I was kind of like, at first I was like, oh, come on. But then I was like, that's kind of fascinating.
You know who I have that with is Timothy Oliphant and Josh Duhamel.
Yes.
I cannot tell them
Yes, I can
apart.
see that.
Yes. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
And who are the other? Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Yes.
And, oh gosh, I'm blanking now. There's another actor that looks a lot
Who looks like Jeffrey
like
Dean
him.
Morgan?
Never mind, this story's going
Well,
nowhere.
Dermot Mulroney and
Dylan McDermott.
Like,
right?
but people really confuse them, partially because of the name, but
Yeah.
also, like, I've seen it, been like, that's Dylan McDermott, and it's the other guy.
I never get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But it's not a face blindness thing. It's more of a Irish name
And it's-
thing.
I'm gonna
Irish
look this
name
up
problem.
and come back to you at the
Wow,
end
this
of the
is
quiz.
really good
All right,
podcasting.
the final question.
Okay.
Okay, this is a little bit more tough, and we might say that we're heading into convoluted corner.
Bing, 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 bing.
Okay, last question, guys. The story of Heat is based on the real-life exploits of Chicago detective Chuck Adamson, who dabbled with acting later in life. In which iconic 1984 fish-out-of-water cop comedy does Adamson appear as Crate Opener 1?
What's 84?
Is it a part of a larger franchise?
It is indeed.
Police Academy?
No.
Okay.
Good guess, though, because that is 1984.
Can we have a clue?
Yeah.
You certainly can.
Just as soon as I finished Googling
Jeffrey Dean Morgan lookalike. Let me right with you. I thought I was going to have a second there to do that. But, okay. It's a pretty obvious clue. Now that I look at it. The film stars Eddie Murphy.
Oh.
Beverly Hills Cop?
Beverly Hills Cop. Yeah.
Yes,
There's this really weird scene. Do you remember the bit that he's like overhears a conversation where they're like sneaking into the warehouse
It's been
and they're having
so
this
long.
weird.
I
Anyway,
gotta
I've
watch
watched
it.
Beverly Hills Cop a lot. But Adamson also appeared in Thief.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to ask.
Crime Story, A River Runs Through It, Stephen King's The Stand, and Quiz Show.
I thought you were going to ask a Dennis Farina question, to be honest.
He passed away in 2008, and Michael Mann dedicated Public Enemies to his memory.
Wow.
So that's...
if you guys do a Public Enemies thing on
Yes.
the pod...
We might. I have this friend who keeps wanting to talk about Public Enemies, and I have actually never seen it.
I will talk about Public Enemies.
Okay.
Because when I saw it, it ended, and I was like, that movie fucking ruled. And everyone around me was like, that movie sucked. And I was like, no.
Oh, it's
Like,
awesome.
I don't think Blake even knows that I'm like, yeah, we're going to do something about
Blake, you heard it here.
By the way, the answer to the Jeffrey Dean Morgan thing is Javier Bardem.
What?
Some people think that.
Yeah, not anymore. But I could see maybe in the early 2000s.
Speaking of hot dudes, sorry, Javier Bardem. My God. Okay.
All right,
And that's
that's
what
our,
this podcast is about.
We did it in
that's
under
our
90
show.
minutes.
Pretty good.
Pretty
We're
tight.
the LA Takedown version.
Yeah.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for
much for
being
having
here.
me.
What do you have going on? Anything you want to tell us about? Anything that you're up to? Any plugs? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Katie Walsh STX. Do not find me anywhere else.
Please.
So I review film review. I write reviews every week, so find me there. I post all my stuff on Rotten Tomatoes, post all my stuff on Letterboxd and Twitter, so that's where you can find my reviews. We're still doing Miami Nice whenever we feel like it, and we have a very fun interview coming up soon.
Can you reveal with whom?
Nope.
Okay. I'm going to listen regardless. I'm excited. You can find us on Twitter at X. At Liam G. Billingham, at DieHardOAB. Phil, you've joined the board of directors at X. Is that correct? You're working closely with Elon.
I'm super politically aligned with those guys. I love the amazing innovations that they've brought to that platform.
The sex bots.
That's really weird. Wasn't he supposed to clean this up? Every 2 seconds I've got a bot. It's like the Matrix in there. I can't getting these bots all over me in that. Anyway, but I am technically on X at Philip Gawthorne, saying funny things that, if I'm lucky, one person likes.
I like your things. Next time on the show, sudden death.
From the sublime to the sublime. We love Peter Hyams.
Have you seen Sudden Death?
We love Hyams.
I haven't seen.
It's Die Hard in a hockey rink with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so join us for that. It's I would say it's quite as good as Heat.
I'm just going to reveal right here, I've never seen it.
But it's a fun movie to discuss, and we do love Peter Hyams. So
Peter Hyams.
Peter Hyams is in it. Powers Booth, speaking of Walter Hill, is the villain in it. It's a fun movie.
Please watch it. And we have a great guest for that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be back next time with I don't know what to say about sudden death. We'll be back next time with
hockey pun.
We'll be back next time with sudden death. Oh, forget
Get hooked.
Boom, nailed it.
Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast created and hosted by Philip Gawthorne. Liam Billingham co-hosts and produces the show. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at DieHardOAB. Rate, review, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, tell your movie podcast-loving friends about Die Hard on a Blank. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.